Joining us now, Freedom Caucus Chairman Mark Meadows, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, and I got to give credit to both of them and the entire Freedom Caucus, including Doug Collins. It was your questioning that nobody knew about behind closed doors that got us a lot more information, and I can't wait to see the other 53 closed-door interviews that are coming. Good to see you both. Mark Meadows.
Good to be with you.
It's now beginning to unravel. The Attorney General, it's over. Mueller's dead. It's finished. They can cling as tightly as they want to their sinking ship and their conspiracy theory. But what is coming is FISA abuse, the FISA applications, the rigged investigation into Hillary, the attempt to bludgeon and undo an election, the attempts to steal an election, all now under the purview of the Attorney General and others. Where are we going with this?
Well, I think in the coming days, and by days I mean just a few days, you will start to see a lot of this unravel. But as it unravels, part of why you're seeing Jerry Nadler and others go crazy is because they know that the truth is coming out. And for as passionate as they were today, and my good friend Jim Jordan did a great job in that committee hearing, but as passionate as they were today, they haven't been passionate when we've been in the privacy of those rooms asking those questions like Jim and I and others have. They won't even look at the documents because they don't want to know the truth. And Director Comey, he has his day of reckoning too. You know, he says they investigate. We also know that they criminally leak as well. And so it's time for accountability.
If the law is applied equally, do we have to go back to Hillary and the rigged investigation? Even, by the way, you two got the information. You didn't share it with me, which, by the way, I deeply resent. You could have shared this information and given me exclusive. But I know because of the closed-door testimony, number one, Lisa Page said, yeah, after 9 months, the FBI had nothing. But we also Strzok and Page put all Comey the FBI decisions on Hillary right inside Loretta Lynch's office. Then we've got a lot more. Well, we'll see what Inspector General Horowitz says, but where do you see it going, Jim Jordan?
Well, I mean, Comey said the same thing all the way up to the day he's fired. They said they still had no evidence of any type of collusion, and obviously the Mueller report demonstrated that as well. To Jim Comey, though, I mean, to not use the word spying, remember what we got last week from the New York Times. We got the story last Thursday where it said the FBI put a person posing as someone else to talk to George Papadopoulos in the Trump campaign.
Hold on, Jim. You got to give the details.
That's called spying.
We had a 30-year-old flirtatious, suggestive, blonde bombshell spy trying to seduce information out of George Papadopoulos. You can't put this in a Bond movie.
Yeah, if that's not spying, tell me what is. And frankly, I don't know that anyone who actually puts much weight into what Jim Comey says now, other than CNN, who's doing a town hall with him.
Wait a minute. When he signed the first FISA warrant, okay, wasn't that a warrant based on a dirty Russian dossier that might have been Russian disinformation, according to the New York Times?
Yes.
To spy on Carter Page in the Trump campaign? Did he not sign that? Was that spying, or am I just out of my mind?
We now have two examples of it.
It's worse than that. Yeah, it's worse than that. He actually knew that there were credibility problems before he ever entered into it. That's the problem.
Well, they didn't tell the court who paid.
Well, Mark,
they didn't tell the court who paid for it. They didn't tell the court that Christopher Steele was desperate to stop Trump, and they didn't tell the court that Christopher Steele had been fired by the FBI because he's out talking to the press, and yet they used the document.
By the way, that would be, I believe, footnote 8 in the dossier, in the application. Doesn't the application, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, and thanks for not sharing all this secret information. Both of you got the information from Bruce Orr that he warned everybody that Steele hated Trump, it wasn't verified, and Hillary paid for it. But now we have Steele at the State Department, and all that information was withheld.
Yep, exactly right, Sean.
Yeah, all of it's been held, but I think there will be some good reporting that brings all of that to light in the very coming near future.
By the way, both of you are in deep trouble because you kept all of it from me, and I hounded you to death for that information, and you wouldn't give it to me.
Now, President Trump's claim of executive privilege over the full Mueller report and its underlying documents earlier today set off some fireworks between the White House and the House Judiciary Chair.
Chairman Nadler is asking the Attorney General of the United States to break the law and commit a crime by releasing information that he knows he has no legal authority to have.
We've talked for a long time about approaching a constitutional crisis. We are now in it. They are stonewalling the American people from all information. It is an attack on the essence of our democracy.
Now, for anyone looking for adults in this back and forth, don't look to Jerry Nadler. This is not a constitutional crisis. It's not an attack on the essence of our democracy. This is the executive branch and the legislative branch flexing their muscles in ways that are, well, that has happened over decades and longer than that. And it's a constitutional exercise. Well, if you know Constitution 101, you can see through this. Joining me now, two people who know more than that. John Yoo, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, and Saul Weisenberg, former Whitewater Deputy Independent Counsel, Fox News contributor. John, I want to start with you. Now, Democrats love to call the president's language reckless, but what about what we just heard from Nadler, calling what happened today, the last few days, a constitutional crisis, John?
Well, Laura, as you suggest, it's not a crisis. It might be a confrontation, but as you rightly point out, this is the way the framers designed the Constitution to work. They gave Congress some powers, the right to conduct hearings and oversight, but they gave the executive branch powers too, and part of that is the right to keep confidential communications and certain kinds of work product. And they didn't expect you would run to court right away and try to litigate it, go to the Supreme Court, ask for their permission for one way or the other. They said ambition should counteract ambition. Let the two branches fight it out, as you suggest, using their own powers, and let it work its way through the political process.
Now, we're going to get to the Don Jr. being asked to testify before the Senate Intel Committee in a moment. But I want to ask you, Saul, about this question today. Did the administration waive an executive privilege claim over the Mueller report already? That's what the Democrats were saying. And since they had McGahn testify already, how can you keep him from testifying again? That was
well, they're two different things. They have certainly waived executive privilege with respect to the portions of the Mueller report that have been released to the public. But you got to remember, as John reminded me before the show, Congress doesn't just want the unredacted Mueller report. They want all the background information. They want all the 302s, all the grand jury.
302s, witness interviews.
Witness interviews, grand jury information. So they're asking for something very much in addition. With respect to the question about Don McGahn, you can testify in a proceeding. I, for example, can decide to testify at the grand jury, and if I am later indicted, I can make the decision, you know what, at trial, I'm not going to testify. So it's a different proceeding. So that's my answer.
But can McGahn, can the president prevent McGahn? Let's say McGahn says, I want to testify.
Oh, absolutely.
Can the president prevent McGahn, for the layman out there, from testifying on Capitol Hill? And does that look like the president wants to hide something or protect this executive privilege, deliberative process privilege, whatever we want to call it?
Oh, no, this is actually the very core of executive privilege that's been upheld by the Supreme Court in the Watergate tapes case. The Supreme Court said quite clearly, communications between the president and his top advisors are protected. And in that case, they were might have been protected against the need by the courts to resolve the Watergate tapes case. I think they would definitely be privileged against a request by Congress. And even though McGahn's not working for him anymore, he can still invoke the privilege. Just like if you and I had an attorney and then we don't have that attorney, we fire the attorney, our attorney-client privilege still exists.
I don't know why they ever allowed him to testify in the first place. I kept saying that at the time. You and I were talking about why were they allowing the White House counsel to go up on Capitol Hill and testify during this whole thing. I think that was a huge mistake.
Keep something else in mind, too. U.S. versus Nixon was a prosecutor against the president. This is just the Congress. And as John said, courts typically, when it's Congress versus the president,
stay out of it. It's a political question.
They typically stay out of it.
It's a political question. All right. Late news today broke that the Senate Intel Committee, remember the Republicans still control the Senate, is subpoenaing, not asking, Don Jr. to testify regarding this Trump Tower project in Moscow. Now, John Jr.'s team basically said that they'd already agreed to appear before the committee. He said no problem. So why subpoena him? What's going on here?
I actually don't get it. I used to work in the Senate. I've signed congressional subpoenas.
That's strange. He said, I'll testify.
Yeah, there's no need to subpoena someone who's voluntarily appearing. You would only use a subpoena after someone appears and refuses to answer questions or not produce documents. So I think like what's going on in the House, but just in a smaller version. People in Congress starting to overreact.
Rand Paul and Mark Meadows, by the way, are calling out the ranking Republican, Senator Burr, Richard Burr, tonight, saying, "What are you doing?" It's a curious development. When I first saw it, I'm like, wait a second, this has to be happening in the House. It can't be happening in the Senate. Strange.
I don't understand it. The only explanation I can have for it, other than if there's some PR reason, which you wouldn't think would be the case with Burr, is that they don't want a situation where he says, I'm going to voluntarily come here, and then he tries to pick and choose what he can answer, and then they have to go do a subpoena. They want to make it clear, I'm just guessing, you're here under our subpoena power.
Yeah, and the interview he did on this show was cited in all the stories about this, being asked about the Trump Tower project. You cleared up a lot for our viewers tonight. Thank you so much.